Good Tuesday morning, everyone, and welcome to another reading from Angels, Demons, and Gods of the New Millennium. Today we're starting Chapter 4, The Precession of the Equinoxes and the Metamorphosis of the Gods. This has a couple of figures, illustrations, and charts. And here's another one. Now, I've posted these, or at least a photograph that I just took of them all, uh, on my Facebook page. So you may want to refer to those as we move ahead with with this chapter. It's going to take a couple of settings to get through the whole thing. But anyway, it's called the precession of the equinoxes, not procession, precession of the equinoxes, and the metamorphosis of the gods. And I start off with an epigram here from Ovid, the Metamorphosis. Now I shall tell of things that change, new being out of old. Since you, O gods, created mutable arts and gifts, give me the voice to tell the shifting story of the world from its beginning to the present hour. I confess I'm old enough to remember with poignant nostalgia the golden age of hippiedom, 1966 through 1969. My wife and I tuned in to the Beatles, vegetarianism, yoga, astrology, and Eastern mysticism, turned on to the softer varieties of chemical mind expansion, and dropped out of college, the military-industrial complex, and any involvement with the social and spiritual formulae of the previous generation. We found ourselves thrust into the vortex of a profound universal polarization of perception. Artists and young people were the first to be affected. Either you saw that the world had just changed radically, or you didn't. If you saw it, you were seized with the realization of limitless possibilities, a world at peace, the eradication of disease and hunger, space travel, spiritual enlightenment. All seemed possible and within our reach. Those that didn't see it, including family members, politicians, and movie stars, were seen as dangerous troglodytes, collaborating with the slave masters and worshiping false old gods of greed, violence, and self-induced ignorance. Many and colorful were the variations within this symphony of change, but Bob Dylan's raspy little voice articulated its major theme. For the times they are a-changing. There's no shortage of theories proposing to explain this cultural phenomenon. The government blamed communist agitation. Military blamed the liberal government. School administrators blamed television and the compassionate child-raising advice of Dr. Benjamin Spock. Right-wing extremists blamed the international Jewish conspiracy, fluoridated water, and Elvis Presley. I kid you not. Elvis Presley blamed the Beatles, and Christian zealots from nearly every band of the ecumenical spectrum proclaimed that the eagerly awaited universal Holocaust prophesied in the Bible was at last at hand. Finally, with a cultural irony that perhaps could only have occurred in 20th century America, a hit Broadway show about hippies revealed the cosmic cause of this manifestation of euphoric optimism and wild unrest: the dawning of the age of Aquarius. World events of the decades following the turbulent 60s have proven that we were a bit premature in our expectations of a millennial utopia. But a broad overview of human history and cultural evolution reveals that we are, indeed, living in an era of radical change. Looking farther back into recorded history, it's possible to see other such transitional periods, flashing at regular intervals along a timeline of history. These brief sparks ignite the atmosphere of the age and define its dominant spiritual, intellectual, and social formulae. Landmarks along the timeline and names of the ages vary depending upon one's scientific or spiritual discipline. The scale of the archaeologist is marked by the Ice Age, Stone Age, Bronze Age, Copper Age, and Iron Age. The sociologist thinks in terms of the Dark Age, Renaissance, and Age of Enlightenment. The Greeks and Hindus sang of a golden age, Yuga, Satya Yuga, golden age, of perfect bliss and harmony when humans walked with the gods. A silver age, Treta Yuga, of justice and enlightenment. A bronze age, Dwapara Yuga, of law and enforced morality. And an iron age, Kali Yuga, of violence and moral degeneracy. To the student of Western Hermeticism, the most significant timeline of the ages is determined by the relative movement of the heavenly bodies. Since at least the 3rd millennium BC, Vedic astrologers were aware of the spherical shape of the earth, the law of gravity, and the heliocentricity of the solar system. Centuries of observation also led them to surmise that our sun and solar system were revolving in an elliptical path about a dual sun or some other inscrutable point in the galaxy. Observing the relative position of the sun against the backdrop of the zodiacal band at the vernal equinox, it was discovered that the sun seems to fall a bit short of its starting position of the previous year, resulting in the loss of approximately 1 degree every 72 years. Consequently, the sun appears to move backwards across the belt of the zodiac at the approximate rate of 1 zodiac sign every 2,160 years. Now I've got a footnote. Astrologers disagree upon the exact length of the astrological ages, giving estimates ranging from 2,000 years to 2,400 years. For the purpose of this essay, I will use a commonly accepted modern calculation of 2,166 years. This results in the great astrological year of 26,000 years. 12 periods of 2,166.66 years, in which the entire zodiacal belt is traversed. Because the ancient observations took place at the vernal equinox, this phenomenon of retrograde movement was named the precession of the equinoxes. During its 12-month yearly journey, the sun moves forward through the zodiac, whose signs serve as symbols of the seasonal changes upon the earth. During the 26,000 years of the great year, the sun moves backwards through the zodiac, whose signs are symbols of spiritual seasons. That are the various stages of the evolving consciousness of humanity. It is the momentum and direction of this spiritual growth that is the focus of this chapter. For it is in truth this movement that animates the metamorphosis of the gods. And under the heading, the Pantheon of One. Yes, I think I'll go on with it for a while. At the risk of being labeled a solar chauvinist, I will affirm a fact that any astrologer who's not suffering some terminal form of parochial denial must grudgingly admit to be true that the sun is the god of the zodiac. Its first and most important godlike duty is to simply provide an aspect of position in a time-space continuum. Without this point of reference, there would be no belt of the zodiac because there would be no fixed point from which to project one. No time, whose fragile existence requires a point of triangulation from which to observe the relative movement of the heavenly bodies. And most importantly, there would be no us. Solar energy, either from our own sun or from earlier generational ancestors, literally created the Earth, Moon, and our planetary neighbors. The conversion of sunlight creates and sustains all life. Truly, in our little corner of the universe, the sun is not only the symbol of a god, the sun is God. It's not to say that the moon and the planets and individual stars, fixed stars, asteroids, comets, black holes, and all the other as yet undiscovered celestial dignitaries aren't also gods. But for those of us upon earth, the influence of these other deities can only be ultimately realized through the agency of or relationship with the sun. Under the heading Local Pantheons, there's abundant evidence to demonstrate that since prehistoric times, the sun has been venerated as a deity by cultures around the world. More common, however, was the worship of a pantheon of goddesses and gods who at first represented an assortment of natural powers and agencies relevant to the daily lives of the population of the local geographic area. Our Stone Age ancestors had thunder gods, gods of the hunt, and gods of fertility, who in later years would be called Zeus and Artemis and Aphrodite, who, just a few hundred miles away, and a handful of years later it would be called Jove, Diana, and Venus. Gods such as these are not destroyed with the passing of each age, just as the sun is not destroyed as it passes from sign to sign in the precession of the equinoxes. Rather, the gods undergo shifts in character and importance within the local pantheon. This metamorphosis is also illustrative of changes which accompany major societal and geopolitical upheavals, such as when the goddess of one culture becomes merely the wife or the mother of her former consort, or the male god of the tribe, city, or nation which has conquered her devotees in battle. For the ceremonial magician, each god can provide a subjective and easy to visualize image of a specific aspect of his or her own complex psycho-spiritual nature. To enter into a working relationship with a god, and to do that you use invocation or evocation or exaltation or ecstasy or prayer, is to contact, assimilate, or direct that particular facet of one's own being personified by the god. As we've observed, the characters of the gods are mutated and change, sometimes subtly, sometimes radically, with each step in the evolving consciousness of our race. In order to operate with a maximum efficiency and safety when invoking a god of any pantheon, the magician must unambiguously be in tune with the most recent shift. Zeus, Artemis, and Aphrodite, and the gods of all ages and cultures are alive and well in the age of Aquarius. But the means by which they exercise their powers upon the modern psyche differ significantly from those of their Bronze Age incarnations. The modern magician who wishes to invoke the strong and aggressive presence of Mars might find himself or herself emotionally and ethically unprepared to handle the manifestation of drunken bloodlust, which was the natural calling card of Homer's god Ares. To better understand the momentum of change along the timeline of the astrological ages, let's take a brief look at just a few of the anthropological, cultural, and spiritual landmarks that characterize the historic epochs important to Western Hermeticism. And that's where we'll leave it today. We'll pick it up by looking closely at these astrological ages, starting with the age of Leo. But keeping all of this in mind with the theme of angels, demons, and gods of the new millennium, it says here in the epigram to the entire book, the gods of one age become the devils of the age to follow. The priests look forward to the coming age and see nothing but the end of the world. And that's where we'll leave it today. I have to work on my slides for tomorrow night's Zoom presentation of The Abyss. I'm busy polishing up the many slides for that presentation. I hope if that interests you, you're already registered. If not, I encourage you to do that today. Until tomorrow morning, Wednesday morning, the morning of the abyss, continue to be good to yourself and be good to each other. Do what thou wilt shall be the whole of the law. Love is the law. lavender will.